Howard, I'm so glad I saved your number. My husband fell at a construction site and is in critical condition. I knew it wasn't safe.
I'm very sorry to hear that. I just want to let you know I'm here to help. Yeah, tell me more about it. Work injuries not only affect the victim, but also everyone around them. Inc. Law is Chicago-based and here to advocate on your behalf. With over 100 attorneys and staff, if you or someone you know has questions about a work injury, call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal. That's Inc. Law.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Sunday, June 21st, 2026, as we record this episode. It's Father's Day, so to all the dads out there, we all hope that you had a wonderful Father's Day. The Chicago White Sox did not have a good weekend as they were swept in the 3-game series against the Tigers. Our show rundown for this episode: the White Sox road woes. We'll be talking about just the difficulties they've been having away from right field. Bullpen concerns, again, as Seranthony Dominguez, again, cannot lock up the save. Where's the offense? And review the big American League Central Series against the Cleveland Guardians. First, let's talk about the Chicago White Sox road woes as they are 15-25 away from right field. Here's Chicago White Sox manager Will Venable addressing those issues the White Sox are facing.
We're looking at everything. I think that's part of what we do on a daily basis is, what is it that we can do better to support this group today? And that, includes when we're at home too. So, there's not been a thing that we've been able to put our finger on to, explain the difference. For me, I think that, in a 40 plus game sample that, a lot of teams, are sub 500 on the road, and certainly we have a big disparity in our record. I think it speaks as much to our home advantage and our fans coming out and supporting us in the way that our players respond to our home fans as much as anything else. So we'll figure it out. These guys, continue to put themselves in good spots to have chances to win. We just got to do a little more on the road.
Now joining me on the Sox Machine podcast is Sox Machine's managing editor, it's Jim Margalus. And before we get started, Jim, happy Father's Day. Did you have a good Father's Day?
Yeah. Solo dadding this week. So it's a lot of fathering, but it's good. It's a lot easier to do it when he's 4 versus 3. There's some stuff he can do by himself. More friends to play with. So it's less hand holding, less crying, less of the terrible 3s, which are terrible 2s don't exist as far as I'm concerned. 2 was fine. 3 was miserable. 4, there's a little bit more reason to go along, a little bit more of here's our plan. And we're going to leave this place peacefully before we show up, right? You're going to remember that you agreed to leave peacefully without screaming when the fun is over, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's good. It's 3 was tough.
Well, to all the dads, again, happy Father's Day. Jim, the White Sox did not have a good weekend in Detroit, as I mentioned in the intro.
They hate their dads.
And the road woes are continuing to pick up. Like, this is now becoming a serious topic. And I guess for our expectations coming to the season, it shouldn't be a surprise. But now that our expectations have been changing mid-season, the White Sox have now lost 7 straight road series. They are now 15-25 on the road, and you've already played half of your road games this year. If you double that number, you're on pace to be 20 games below 500 on the road, which means that you have to be just as good or even better at home, which they have been. That's why they still have a winning record. Will Venable, I guess, based on what we just heard from him in the intro, he's trying to find an answer as far as, is there a better process that we should be doing to play better on the road? But what do you make of the White Sox road woes to start this season?
They're weird because they're not what you would expect. Like, I would think if the White Sox were bad on the road, it's because they're not hitting on the road, because maybe they're a little too reliant on the offense hitting homers at home, and those cheap or wind-aided fly balls to right field don't carry the same, kind of like the Kauffman Stadium problems of just going to a bigger park or a park with less friendly corners, all of a sudden they have to sequence plate appearances better. They have to defend better, and they're just not doing that. But in this case, like they're hitting actually better on the road. Like that's not necessarily the problem. So that's the first place I looked, and that's not the issue. They are, at least of late, they're playing decent teams on the road, or good teams like the Yankees and Phillies. Like that's and we're trying to figure out this new look White Sox. But then they lost a series against the Twins. They lost a series against the Giants. So like it's been longer running than that. The one number that jumped out to me, like the pitching, is the big disparity, and that's what's confusing. Just because you would think that if pitching staff that can give up the homer would get in trouble, they'd have problems at home as much as they would on the road, but actually they're pitching better at home. So like the one thing I wonder is looking at the BABIP, batting average on balls in play, 40 points higher on the road. So I'm curious, that could be luck. That could be, it's a small sample. It's less than half a season divided into half seasons. So it's,
Sure.
it can be a little bit wonky, but part of me wondered if you have younger players, and perhaps this outfield that's been kind of a mishmash all year, does it change the way they're defending? Does it change the way they're positioned to where the pitching staff is not getting its usual support? I looked at this just out of curiosity, see if it was a weird rate field thing. The batting average on balls in play is pretty even for hitting, for the White Sox batters, home and away. But on the road, it's like 260 at home. It's 307 on the road for batting average on balls in play. A lot more hits, a lot more longer at bats. So that could not, maybe it's not defense, but it could be, who knows, like just, besides luck, it could be pitchers being, perhaps because they're trailing, they've put in their front in the bullpen, or they have starters or eating it just because they have to get an inning where they're not, you normally wouldn't have them in if they are leading. And so just games get away from them because they're already trailing, and you don't use your better pitchers while trailing. It could be just, a simple matter of that. But if you're looking for like something more concrete or something I'll be paying attention to just to see, like, is there anything there? That's one thing that jumped out to me, just with maybe outs not being converted, and just because the pitching staff isn't elite, it's still young, still uneven. We're watching guys go through first full seasons. Could be a case where, it's just noise, but maybe they need, great defense, or all the defense the White Sox can provide them. And when they don't, it gets kind of hairy. That's really like a theory I'll throw out there. Not necessarily one I believe, but something I noticed and can think of some moments kind of flashing before my eyes of just like, the defense maybe wasn't that great. So, or there was some miscommunication in the gaps by the walls, etc. But yeah, it could also just be a noise from lesser pitchers being used.
With the whole BABIP stat, like 307 seems to be closer to normal, Jim. The 260 at home, that's a surprising number to me. Like, I fear regression to the mean would be coming for the White Sox pitchers at home.
It could be, I have to look at it, but it could be a case where just rate field being a smaller field, harder to drop hits in.
Okay. I buy that.
Yeah. Like, something like Coors Field, because the outfield's massive. That's why the batting average is so inflated. But with rate field being, symmetrical, being, no weird gaps to cover, and the alleys are pretty small. Like, it's bad park for triples. Also, not a great park for batting average. Great park for homers, great park, or a good park for offense overall because of the homers. But if you're not hitting homers, then maybe it's a little harder to, especially as defenses get better, positioning gets better, harder to really just get those hits when you need a hit.
So other than the annoyance of not being confident anymore when the White Sox are on the road, it's like, what an amazing week. 4-1 against the Atlanta Braves and Los Angeles Dodgers. Wow. Turn that around. 1-5 against the Yankees and getting swept by the Tigers after not getting swept by the Yankees is very disappointing. And if you didn't get a chance to watch the series, the opening game, the White Sox actually had a lead. against Tarek Skubal. I know everyone pays attention to the verbal spat that was going on between Skubal and injured pitcher slash clubhouse wizard Mike Vassell, but the White Sox had a 3-2 lead. Tristan Peters made a defensive blunder. Tigers ended up winning that game 4-3. That's a disappointing loss. The next day, Sam Antonacci hits a leadoff homer. That's it. That's pretty much the extent of the offense. The White Sox lost 4-1. And then on Sunday, this leads into the bullpen concerns because Davis Martin, I thought, Jim, had a nice bounce back start. Sure, the strikeout to walk rate, not great. I think he had 4 strikeouts to 3 walks. He did have to deal with some traffic, but he only allowed 1 run over 6 innings on 77 pitches. And a 2-run lead for Brian Hudson, Grant Taylor, and Seranthony Dominguez. Those are the 3 best relievers, Jim, that Will Venable has right now. Hudson did his job, but Grant Taylor, again, allowed another home run. And Seranthony Dominguez, he got the first 2 guys out, but then he stumbles, allows an infield single, and then things just start coming apart again on Seranthony Dominguez. So with Grant Taylor and Seranthony Dominguez kind of having really rough outings the last couple of times they've been out there, do you have concerns with Grant Taylor and Seranthony Dominguez?
I think, a case where Dominguez is somebody who's hit the ceiling of setup man as somebody with good stuff, but platoon concerns and command concerns. And so, like, that's why he's typically been used in the 8th inning if a team doesn't have to use him in the 9th, just because you can use him against righties. You can use him. He's not the last line of defense. You can have somebody warming the bullpen, a left-handed component ready in the bullpen if needed, to where, it's not an insult if you pull him, versus in the 9th. Typically don't have somebody warming up when the closer's in the game. And so there's this general concern about Dominguez. If the splitter wasn't what he needed to neutralize lefties enough, then he has problems. In this case, like, the mistake was a sweeper. He had Dingler in a 1-2 count. The fastball did what it should have done in terms of getting behind. He was chasing away, like, all he had to do, and this is very simple, but in terms of, like, you can understand the thought process, it wasn't a case where he had to execute a pitch that he doesn't really execute that often. Sweeper is a good pitch for him. Just had to get off the plate. He left it up, elevated on the outer third. Dingler smashed it. So, like, that's execution error versus, like, the weakness of Dominguez rearing its ugly head. Also, he had, like, the infield single by a hair of a step that kept the inning going. So a little bit of bad luck, a little bit of McGonigal beating him, and then a little bit of just mortality, or just decent hitter beating a decent pitcher, because it happens in baseball. And when it happens in the 9th inning, it's under the microscope. And Dominguez, like, when you put him under the microscope, there are things you notice that aren't that flattering. And then when you zoom out, you still notice them. So that's why, like, the White Sox signed him the contract they signed him to, which is kind of the contract that's a bet on somebody who might be able to close, versus a proven closer, versus, like, somebody who's established as a setup guy. So yeah, you have concerns about him just hitting that ceiling over and over again. Taylor is, like, weirder, just because he has these characteristics James writes about, of just, he has this great stuff. He has a starter's arsenal. He's got extension. The individual pitches grade out well. And sometimes, like, he just gets burned, like, whether it's a homer, whether it's, again, batting average and balls in play, like sequencing, bad luck, weak hits, solid hits. There's this element of, like, why does it come together? Or why does he have reverse splits somehow? Like, there are these kind of components that just never quite fit. And it's hard to know. I think, having James on hand to write about pitchers, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because, like, he's so good at drilling down. And I don't think many teams have somebody covering them who drills down on pitchers, to where, is it the case where, do all elite relievers have weird things going on that just aren't being explored because their save rate's okay? Or is it the case where Taylor does have some strange characteristics that are maybe unique to him, or unique to the strength of his arsenal, just, and also his youth, relative inexperience, relieving, that, there are some warts or lumps he takes when he tries to put it all together, over the course of a full season. So, it's sticks out in my head, I should say, of like when the failures come up, like, well, he does have reverse splits somehow. And, like, yeah, does have to locate the curveball. If lefties are spitting on the curveball, then, perhaps the fastball becomes more, vulnerable. Yeah. It's Taylor. I'm still trying to figure out for a number, because it seems like he's trying to figure himself out, for whittling down his arsenal and handling relievers. Could be a case too, where it's like a midseason wall a little bit of just league figuring him out a little bit. Stuff isn't as sharp, and so they can game plan for him a little bit better, and mistakes get hit harder. I would say I have more faith in Taylor figuring it out versus Dominguez, because Dominguez's flaws are well established, and every team that's used him as a closer has kind of wrestled with this a little bit. But both, I think, have a cause for concern. Not like severe, I would say lingering cause for concern, that the pieces don't quite fit right, especially if like Taylor's being used for multiple innings and then is unavailable, and Dominguez more has to be the guy that, he has weaknesses being. So yeah, it's not an elite bullpen, and when the offense is scoring, then the scrutiny intensifies. Same thing with like Hudson when he had that rough patch of just like, well, he has been DFA'd an awful lot in his career to where, all of a sudden him showing up in this lockdown lefty form is new. And when regression sets in, you think like, is he turning into pumpkin? And like, no, he's fine. He's just good, not great. And so sometimes I think with Taylor, there's also a case where he's good, not great. And then having this sudden contending level of scrutiny and slimmer margin for error, or the errors that are made are felt more. That's new, and we'll see how they handle it.
I think with Dominguez, my take on this situation, and he told James Fegan during that excellent piece about the bullpen that you could read on SoxMachine.com, is that Dominguez really wants every save opportunity. But moving forward, I don't know how Will Venable trusts him to do that. His last two outings against the Dodgers and the Tigers, I should say, in his last two save opportunities, because he did pitch on Saturday just to get some work in, it's been too Alex Colomé-like. I continue to use this phrase because he just continues to put base runners on. And it was the same situation, Jim. It's 7, 8, 9. If you can't trust Seranthony Dominguez to face the bottom of the order in any medium to high leverage late inning situation, what do you do with this guy? And I don't know. If I'm Will Venable, I don't know how I can have any confidence in Dominguez. You're still going to need him with this homestand against two AL Central opponents. Maybe you pitch him in the 7th. Maybe you pitch him in the 8th. You do risk of him getting upset that he's not getting save opportunities, because that's why he signed with the White Sox and that's what he was sold on. And maybe you do have Grant Taylor pitch that 9th inning. There are White Sox fans, though, that after Sunday's game thought Taylor should have pitched 2 innings because he's not pitching all that frequently, Jim. And I'm under the impression that Venable did not push Taylor into the 9th inning, so he has Taylor available to use either on Monday or Tuesday against Cleveland. You might be able to only use Taylor a couple times a week. So I don't know how Venable handles this moving forward, but I don't think it's a Venable issue. It's just that Taylor and Dominguez need to do their job, especially Seranthony Dominguez, because if this continues and you don't have a lot of confidence in what Dominguez can do in medium or to high leverage situations during the season, I don't know how you use him. It just feels like it's $10 million. It's a complete waste.
Well, I think with Dominguez, like, it was fine having him close because it was the bottom of the order.
Right.
Yeah, they shape these saves to where Taylor faces the tougher part, or maybe the lefties. And then when the 9th inning rolls around, oftentimes 9th innings do roll around to the bottom of the order, just because of the way 27 outs rolls, is that oftentimes in an average game with an average number of plate appearances, the bottom of the order comes up last. And so there will be save situations. What's weird to me about Dominguez is like the number of days off he's had this month. Like, looking at the days rest, like this was the first time he's pitched with like 1 day's rest. Otherwise, it's like 5, 3. He's pitched on back-to-back days once, and then had another 3 days rest and another 4 days rest. So he's been infrequently used. Even going back to last month too, he had 6 days rest at one point. So you get this situation of like, if it is rust or if it is a case where, he doesn't get many, in the roles he was previously working in, like he'd just be working as a setup guy. Sometimes they'd be trailing by one, sometimes they'd be ahead by one. And so he'd work more regularly. Whereas when they're trying to shoehorn him into these ideal closer situations, or maybe they have him backing up Taylor, but then Taylor ends up going 2 innings and they don't need him. You do get a case where like he doesn't pitch. So like in terms of innings, because he's missed time with injuries here and there, he's not off his usual innings total, but from last year when he was healthy, and especially for the postseason, like he does like to work. And so I wonder if because of this like level of distrust with him as the closer, but also not wanting to relegate him to 7th inning appearances when, they'd be normally Seranthony Dominguez shaped in previous seasons, but you can't quite say him that because then they're saying you're not the closer. And then like the 9th innings don't roll around and like he can't be used for those either because Taylor's available, or you want your lefty in there instead. You might get situations where you just don't pitch him enough. And so he does come in these situations where it has to work and then it doesn't quite work. So I think it's maybe overall a little bit of an awkward existence to where, he's being paid like a good reliever, so he should pitch like a good reliever anytime he's called upon, but he's also not working as much as he's used to working. And so it might be something where he's not feeling like himself either. It's a strange fit right now with the way they paid him to close and the way he's not quite living up to it and the way Will Venable is reacting to it.
Would you have pushed Davis Martin one more inning? Because he was only at 77 pitches through 6.
Yeah, I can see the argument both ways. If he started the inning, it would have been fine. He has T-top concerns, times through the order penalty concerns, like the third time through has been markedly worse than the second and first. So if you're looking, and if you have your bullpen lined up, sure, this might be the time to have him avoid that. You're not saving Brian Hudson, you're not saving Grant Taylor. Like, they're rested for the situation. Give it to him because how often does this happen where it's all lined up? Also, it seems like Martin hit a wall. Speaking of midseason walls a little bit, where he talked about being gassed and not executing the way he was. So if you see an opportunity to spare him an inning, spare him some pitches, you have him be more effective through the rest of the season. You take those little opportunities. So I could see, not going with him. He wasn't necessarily dominant. He was fine. He was very effective, but it wasn't like he was blowing guys away. Only 4 strikeouts, got double plays to get out of the inning, worked around some traffic. So yeah, I could see him starting the inning and like getting in trouble. But I could also see a case where it was the opportunity was there to cut it off after 6. Quality start. Great job. All our best relievers are lined up for perfect handedness in spot in the lineup, deployment. Let's use this opportunity while we have it. So that's why I think I'm on the side where like what Venable did was fine.
Now the opener, this has been I don't know if it's a sticking point for White Sox fans, but there are some that really do not like Will Venable using one of his relievers to start the game. This was asked to Will Venable over the weekend about his use of the opener. Here's White Sox manager Will Venable explaining his rationale of continuing to use this strategy.
The players' reactions, as we've done it more, they've been more open to it, and really that's where it starts. You are sensitive to the fact that these guys are very, routine oriented, and that certainly for a starting pitcher that using an opener can disrupt that. So you have different reactions to it, and in the case of when we've done it with Fedde and Burke, they've responded very well to it. As far as today goes, today is not a traditional opener. It's a bullpen day. But as far as the benefits of an opener is, number one, you have some upside to the matchups up front. where in the case of, let's say, the Tigers, where you have a Green and a McGonigal, that you know that regardless of if you throw a lefty or righty, you're going to get in the top four. You know, it also, there's an adjustment usually by the opposition in which benefits your bulk guy. So yesterday, again, a really good example where you have Burling in there, you end up with an extra righty or two for Fetty. You're able to drop him and start him in a spot that's maybe more beneficial for him. So there's a lot of benefits to it. And yesterday, even with the 2 runs that they ended up scoring, that maybe you don't love because you did use the opener, it really did put Fetty in a good spot to go through that lineup a couple times and was able to be successful, and then tough luck play there that they ended up scoring. So there's a lot of benefits to it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but in the right situations against the right lineup, it's a good strategy.
Okay, Jim, we continue to see the opener by the White Sox. We'll be previewing the upcoming series against Cleveland. Usually he's been using the opener for Sean Burke and Eric Fetty, and both those guys will be appearing in this upcoming series against Cleveland. We're about halfway through the season. Are you okay with the opener strategy?
Yeah, I think it's fine, especially for the pitchers being used. I think like Sunday, or I should say, not Sunday, the finale with the Yankees, Sean Burke throwing the final 7 1/3 inning after Brian Hudson was like, yeah, that's the opener strategy, like the perfect execution of it. 1 2/3 innings by Hudson, Burke going the other 22 outs. That's what I would point to as the exact idea of what you're going for, like the perfect execution of it. Everybody living up to the idea and then some. Like if Burke started the game and went 7 1/3 innings, you'd say like, great start. So the fact that he was the last pitcher used, I think is very satisfying, and basically put him in position to succeed. I think same thing with Fetty. Like we were worried about Fetty, thinking like he was on the chopping block because like San Francisco lit him up and he just wasn't getting any guys out, and they used the opener for that one. But like they stuck with it, and like the next outing was fine. And like they've actually, yeah, and like looking at his record of the White Sox record in games he's pitched, like they lost his game against Detroit, but he was fine in that one. They won the previous 4, so it's working. Not always the prettiest. I think you get into the situation that like Rick Renteria, I think, found especially objectionable when he was the manager, and like kind of the opener came into vogue and he didn't go along with it. It's just like when you get into the situation where the opener doesn't get out of the first, it feels like, what was the point? You're already scrambling. It's a disaster. And sometimes it happens, but like in the case of Fetty's outing against Atlanta, that happened, and he pitched 5 and they won the game in 10 innings. So like there are ways to get out of it, even if it looks especially ugly early. So yeah, I don't see any argument to go against it. It seems like Anthony Kay grumbled against it, and then he pitched well enough to get out of that to where he needed somebody holding his hand in the start. But like Fetty, probably not in a position to complain about it, even if he doesn't like it, given the year he had last year and what he signed for with the White Sox. But, he's been pitching better, and the White Sox have been winning games. It's not like you're costing him arbitration earnings because he's not getting wins. Like he's somebody who just needs to contribute to a pitching staff. So I think he's like the ideal guy to open for. And Burke, I think you would hope that as he evolves or kind of settles into what his final form is as a major league starter, then he can handle games by himself. But if he goes the final 7 1/3 inning when he has somebody open for him against a good offense, then that shows at least he's not making excuses or like pointing the finger at being asked to enter in the middle of an inning. Like he handled it well. So I see no fault with the deployment of openers.
I mean, with how well Sean Newcomb pitched in that bullpen game, like maybe he's the ideal opener. I'm not crazy about Brandon Eisert being the opener. Like if you're going to do this because you're facing strong lefties, I would probably go with Newcomb, maybe Brian Hudson. If you are going to continue to go back to back with Sean Burke and Eric Fetty and using the opener, I'm just not, I don't know how you use Brandon Eisert other than, hey, we're down 5. It's the 8th inning. How about you close this one out for us, Brandon? Like that's the
And
only usage I could think of for him.
no, he's not somebody who has splits really. Like he had reverse splits last year. He has traditional splits this year and to the extent of like OPS, but like righties are hitting 300 against him. So it's a
Yeah.
case where like lefties are doing more damage, but righties see him just fine. Like it's a strange case, but yeah, you're not. I think he might be useful as lefty against lefties who struggle against lefties, but coming in for the first inning and facing like usually if they're at the top of the order, they're talented left-handed hitters who manage lefties just fine.
Yeah.
I don't think his arsenal is shaped to get them out in a way that's
No.
especially useful. So yeah, I agree with you there.
No. Yeah. But then again, who do you have right now in Charlotte that you can call up to replace Brandon Iser? The pitching depth, as you wrote, Jim, is kind of
Yeah.
thin at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't think there's Joe Rock was there. Now he's in the bullpen right now. But I think like they have relievers, just not lefty relievers that I can think of.
The Joe Rock experience is wild because it does not look good at all. But he's only given up like maybe a run in his 3 innings that he's pitching. It's not a pretty, it's effectively wild. Joe Rock is. That's the White Sox bullpen right now. The team really could use them to step up. But I think to wrap up as far as that conversation, Seranthony Dominguez, man, you can't fail anymore. 7-8-9, you got a lead. You want these saves? Close the game. No excuses. Do your job, bud. You're getting paid a lot of money, and it's not that difficult of a task. To your point, Jim, Grant Taylor's handling the harder task. Now, what would have helped this weekend for the White Sox in Detroit is scoring a lot more runs. Their offense was very quiet. They only scored 8 runs in this 3-game series. Maybe the most devastating stat from this weekend. Colson Montgomery, Chase Mydroth, and Miguel Vargas combined 2 for 30. That is very tough for the White Sox to get any type of offense going, especially with how Will Venable has been using all 3 of these hitters in the middle of the lineup. Montgomery went 0 for 11, Mydroth 1 for 10, and Vargas 1 for 9. Sam Antonacci had a good weekend. He went 4 for 10. But playing the games at Comerica Park, just watching these swings, it was a lot of fly balls that were just not carrying at Comerica, Jim. And I'm wondering, were the White Sox trying too hard to hit home runs in Detroit?
Maybe not hit home runs in terms of selling out, but I think they were trying to attack pitches in the zone. Like I think they had an idea of like these guys can throw strikes pretty well. So we can't count on waiting them out into fastball counts. We need to attack the pitch that we want early. And I think it's kind of like the opposite of Hawk Harrelson saying, the more pitches you see, the more dangerous you become. I think it can pile up to where like we're not seeing many pitches, and so it just looks very, very ineffective, and just kind of flaccid overall. And so perhaps to the extent that hitting is contagious, I think like sometimes not hitting is contagious, or you get a situation where we've only made them throw 22 pitches in 3 innings, and now we got to start taking pitches, but then you get a bad counts and you get out of sorts a little bit, and I feel bad for Luis Angel Acuna because like that should have been his game on Sunday. Like I think he settled into a role in June to where like he's been useful. Like it seems like he's not playing much center field because Tristan Peters has it handled. So he's more or less the backup shortstop, pinch runner, occasional, maybe gets 1 start in a series, but like he's playing pretty well. He's hitting over 400 in June. Like he's the ideal 26 man right now, or like last man on the bench, in that you don't have to play him all that much and you're still getting something from him when he plays, and you're not like having Jacob Gonzalez sit for no reason. So like I was really hoping that game would be kind of a launch point for like, hey, this is Luis Angel Acuna, kind of like I think what the White Sox were hoping for somebody who can provide some usefulness in the 9th spot. Whenever he gets on base, it's great. And he showed power a little bit over the winter leagues, and to see that manifest itself in a major league game was cool. Maybe more of that. So that's my attempt to talk about Luis Angel Acuna when the bullpen overshadowed him. But I think, yeah, they try to attack early. I think just Miguel Vargas is off, and he did get a half game of rest because he's been playing basically nearly every game, nearly every inning, and just looked off. He had some short at bats. He had he had a 3-pitch strikeout that wasn't great. Also, one thing that kind of jumped out to me over the last 2 series is uh, a lot of hitters not challenging.
Yeah.
And you could see them just like shaking their head and just, and I'm at home being like, tapping my head, just like I do that on my couch sometimes. Just when a pitch is off, just like might want to challenge that, and they can't see me. But it happens to be like after Edgar Carroll burns one early on, and so they're down to the last challenge, and uh, it does seem like they had, again, like when they tried to take pitches, then the count wasn't with them because the pitchers were around the plate enough and the catchers were doing a good enough job of getting those borderline strikes called for them to where it kind of piled up against them. So I'm willing to write it off as a bad series, just kind of a uninspiring week overall. Could be a case where, there is some fatigue setting in. There is and fatigue in terms of just like not having, I guess, partially fatigue, partially like you're counting on Miguel Vargas an awful lot when he wasn't expected to be that great entering the season. He's been wonderful this season, an all-star this season, but like there will be moments maybe where Miguel Vargas looks like the Miguel Vargas that we thought he was. And so, what's the counterpoint? And then you get into a case where like nobody's producing from catchers. Colson Montgomery runs hot and cold. Braden Montgomery and Jacob Gonzalez are rookies. And so maybe the lineup isn't as deep as it sometimes looks or sometimes feels. So I am curious. Then we're going to talk about this a little bit in terms of like when Kyle Teel comes back and lengthens the lineup, when catcher goes from being a 0 to maybe being a plus. What does that look like for the rest of the lineup? But for the time being, as long as they've had that hole in their lineup and as long as they have a lot of inexperienced players and a lot of like shuffling, you could have these ruts where if Colson isn't doing it, if Vargas has the odd week off, then, or should odd off week, he's never off, then you do get in these situations where the offense doesn't come as easily.
Yeah, I think the one adjustment for future games played at Comerica, because I know Colson Montgomery in James's latest column from Detroit that Montgomery is admitting that maybe with youth on their side, they don't know what they don't know. The thing about Comerica is if you're noticing that the ball is just not carrying, especially for Colson hitting a lot of fly balls that weren't reaching the warning track, it's this whole concept of you have to think small. And with Detroit throwing so many fastballs in the outer third against Colson or even off-speed stuff, like he needs to make an adjustment next time he faces Detroit in Detroit. Don't be afraid to just flip those pitches to left field, because the way that they pull the outfield, and we saw this with Tristan Peters's double, the left fielder against the lefty hitters for the White Sox was way in the gap. So you had that complete line. So if you just waited a little bit longer, like Peters did, and you flip it down the left field line, that's like an automatic double. So I just felt like there was more opportunities. And in late game situations, Detroit was very much thinking small, just focusing, not only just putting the ball in play, but hitting line drives, finding pitches that they can hit a line drive and put some pressure on the White Sox pitchers. There just wasn't a whole lot of pressure this weekend from the White Sox hitters against the Tigers pitchers. Not a lot of walks as well in this weekend. So I kind of question what the entire offensive game plan was coming to this series for the White Sox, but it just puts more stress on the bullpen. The margins are very small, and that's how you get swept when things just don't bounce in your favor for the Chicago White Sox. But do want to also give a cap tip to Junior Perez for hitting his first major league home run off Tarek Skubal, of all pitchers. So that was a pretty cool moment. Junior Perez should have had his game on Friday, Jim. Luis Angel Acuna should have had his game on Sunday. Alas, the White Sox still get swept. And now the Chicago White Sox come home. And this is a key homestand for the White Sox. It's against American League Central opponents, but none bigger than Monday through Wednesday. as the White Sox and the Cleveland Guardians finally face each other for the first time in 2026. The Cleveland Guardians are in first place. They did not have a great week. They had a slightly better week than the White Sox. They were 2-4 this week instead of the White Sox going 1-5. But the Guardians do have a 1-game lead in the American League Central. They are currently 41-37. They're just 4-10 in their last 10 games, 4-6, I'm sorry, in their last 10 games, just like the White Sox. The Guardians are a good road team. They are 22-20 this year away from Cleveland. Your pitching probables for this series, Monday and Tuesday night. These are at 6:40 p.m. Central Time starts. It is the righty, Gavin Williams, for the Guardians against Anthony Kay for the White Sox. On Tuesday, it's Parker Messick against Sean Burke. We'll see if the White Sox do use an opener on Tuesday. And then a Wednesday getaway day. This is a 1:10 p.m. Central Time start. It's Tanner Bybee against Eric Fetty. Again, possible opener for Fetty. Bybee and Fetty seem to be the bad luck starting pitchers for both teams, as they've been pitching a lot better than what their win-loss records look like. I think the big storyline from a White Sox perspective entering this series, Jim, is the possible return of Kyle Teel. Will Venable mentioned that he would be speaking with Chris Getz after Sunday's game against the Detroit Tigers. We are expecting some type of clarity from the Chicago White Sox on Monday before the game, if not in the morning. I guess the best news, White Sox fans, is that if we all receive the email press release from the White Sox, they have activated Kyle Teel. That's going to probably come around like 10 in the morning, and that will be a breaking news story on SoxMachine.com that you'll be able to check out. If we don't get that email, then around 3 o'clock, we're going to get some type of explanation from Will Venable, maybe even Chris Getz, on what the status is with Kyle Teel. But Jim, Teel's looked good. I mean, he looks strong. I guess he didn't need that many at-bats in Charlotte if they do call him up. But they really do need Kyle Teel. I did not know just how bad the production has been for the catcher spot for the White Sox, Jim, until I looked at Fangraphs, both not only offensively but defensively. White Sox catchers, mostly Drew Romo and Edgar Caro, rank dead last in WAR, negative 0.8. So bringing back Kyle Teel, this is the perfect time, in my opinion, Jim, when now facing the Guardians. How do you feel that the immediate impact could be with the return of Kyle Teel?
You don't want to put too much stress on a guy who hasn't appeared in a major league game yet this year and is coming off of
and he's already going to put a lot of stress on himself because that's just the way Kyle Teel is.
But it's a case where like, yeah, sure, it'd be great if he hits and right away, just given how little the catcher, like the opportunity is right there. And we've seen this before with the White Sox of just how hard is it to upgrade a position when they're that bad? And then it turns out like, one, they've been so bad that like they're 3-4 wins below replacement. And then they upgrade to like 1 win below replacement and it's still bad. And you don't actually feel an impact because like bad is bad, to quote Huey Lewis. With White Sox catchers, perhaps like catching is unique enough. The demands of the position are unique enough to where, you can feel the upgrade because you don't expect offense. So when offense shows up, even an average amount, lineup gets lengthened. Also, we'll see like how much he plays, if he's going to play most days, or if they're going to ease him into everyday duty, or like, are they going to play 2 catchers? Is he going to DH? How's that going to work? I would be okay with him getting like, every other game treatment early on, because I think like a half dose of Kyle Teel helps quite a bit with the way the offense or just like the lineup is right now. Maybe for a week or 2, never having him catch 2 games in a row just to make sure that everything's structurally sound. Cause it'd be a bummer if like he catches 2 games in a row and then like something barks on him and then all of a sudden he's back on the injured list. So I think that would be what I would consider reasonable. And anything above that's fine. But yeah, the offense is looking for like a Kyle Teel like production, both in terms of just hit tool power, the position he plays like fits in perfectly to add a level that this offense has not had. And so yeah, good luck. Just fulfilling those. If he starts out like 0 for 12 because he's rusty, just Yeah, it sure be a bummer, but hopefully he's got a lot of time to um, let it even out or get up to speed. Like he doesn't have to be great right away, just as long as he's healthy and the legs are responding well enough to where like he can handle a major league workload the rest of the way.
Maybe the flip side, if he goes 3 for 4 against Cleveland on
Yeah,
Monday.
proof of concept immediately.
Yeah, exactly. I could see a situation where he starts Monday and Wednesday, and well, maybe that's the follow-up question. And I think maybe he comes off the bench in a pitch hitting situation in Tuesday's game with Parker Messick taking the ball for the Guardians. He's been very good, but he pitches from the left-hand side, so maybe try to use the platoon advantage. Now, with that said, I don't know who you send back to Charlotte, Drew Romo or Edgar Caro. At this stage, both of them, in my opinion. I don't think there's anyone else that you can call up along with Kyle Teel to do a complete hockey line change at the catcher position. Do you have a preference, Jim? Romo or Caro to back up Kyle Teel?
I mean, Romo is batting 144. It kind of feels like
What is
he
Caro batting?
not 144.
Okay.
Like I'm looking at yeah, let me look at he's 2 for 31 his last 10 games. So
Yikes. Yeah. Yeah, time to get yourself to work on yourself down in Charlotte while the White Sox try to win some games.
So I do think it's a case where like this was a good opportunity for Caro to be the guy, the number one catcher, even if he's traded, like a good way to prove that he can handle another team's number one catcher demands, and didn't do it. But I think now with what the situation the White Sox find themselves in, can't really worry about him being shaped like a trade asset. It's more a matter of like Kyle Teel needs to catch as much as possible, as much as is responsible to put on his plate. And then Caro, you handle the rest. We'll see if he like maybe he responds well to that. Maybe like he plays well being the second catcher versus like the 1A guy he kind of was, or behind Romo, and he looks closer to what he looked like last year. And then like he's still a useful catcher. Maybe just not a guy you're hoping to trade for like a significant asset. But I think right now, just treat Carroll like a backup. Don't worry about playing time. Just get your two best catchers available, and then play your best catcher between those two, as much as his body will allow. And then if Carroll is, if Carroll has a Romo-like stretch to where like he's not hitting at all, then maybe you switch out catchers, bring Romo back up, look on the waiver wire, look for like a minor trade just to bring in somebody else who isn't Corey Lee, since it seems like they're completely out on him. But there are ways to do it. But yeah, I think it's pretty simple. Don't overthink it. As soon as Teel is ready to catch what he was hoping to catch at the start of the season, then give it to him.
Yeah, and the DH, you don't need to put both of them in the lineup. That's what we talked about last year. With the way that Randall Grichuk and Andrew Benintendi have been hitting, you can continue to having those guys take care of the DH role. So unlike last year, we're not going to see Teel and Caro both in the same lineup. So I guess you can keep Edgar Caro to be his backup. But yeah, hopefully lots of Kyle Teel. Again, when that news does break, visit us on SoxMachine.com to check out that news. Keys to the series as we wrap up as far as this episode: ball go far, team go far. We know the White Sox love to hit a lot of home runs, especially at right field. The stat that surprised me, we talk about how the White Sox could use some right-handed bats. The White Sox lead Major League Baseball in hitting home runs against left-handed pitching. So Messick's been great for Cleveland. Can they find some instant offense in that form as far as hitting home runs against the Cleveland lefties? Jim, the White Sox, with not having to face Jose Ramirez, that's good news. Steven Kwan hasn't been that strong this year, but Travis Bazzana is having himself a week. In his last 7 games, Bazzana is hitting .417 with a .517 on base percentage, slugging .875. He's got 3 homers and 7 RBIs. I think he's the guy right now in the lineup for the White Sox pitchers that, all right, there's no Jose Ramirez. We have to figure out this rookie and shut down Travis Bazzana.
Yeah, Chase the Louder's out too, so that really does put the focus on just a few bats. Yeah, Bazzana is a key. I was looking at their monthly splits, and it's basically like Cleveland has turned into even more of a Cleveland form since this month, in that they're allowing the fourth fewest runs, but they're scoring the fewest. So I would expect low scoring games. I would expect execution to be at a premium. To your point about bullpen has to do its job, but also like defense has to do its job. Like we've seen the Guardians out defend the White Sox and win that way many times.
Yeah.
And I guess with Josh Naylor completely out of the picture, with Jose Ramirez out of the picture, like you are losing some of the usual suspects to where there shouldn't be the boogeymen around them, to where you shake your head and say like, yep, there he goes. Like Bazzana, he's good, just an unknown. So you don't have that scar tissue built up. They should be able to handle themselves well. Like, there's no reason to fear Cleveland at this point. They're a good team. Like, they do what they do well, but they are wounded right now. And, they did get outplayed. They did have that formula used against them against Milwaukee. Like Milwaukee does that very well in terms of hitting well, but also pitching well and bullpenning well and defending well and all of that, to where like you can't out Cleveland, Milwaukee. So I think they are gettable. So time to dust themselves off, get the home magic going again, and win 2 out of 3.
And not have to face Kate Smith when down.
Yeah.
He's been really good. He's been really good.
Yeah, they have their formula. Like they have their high leverage, Emmanuel Clase never mattered formula. Like it's amazing how they can just keep doing that.
Yeah, I think the first 5 innings of these games is going to be pretty important for the White Sox. Try to avoid the back end of Cleveland's bullpen. They've been very tough this year. But we'll be recapping these games, of course, on SoxMachine.com. James Fegan will be covering these games for us as well throughout this entire homestand. So again, please subscribe to our YouTube channel to check out all of our videos, as we've been posting the post-game press conferences and also YouTube shorts as well. We've been posting those over on our Instagram page as well. You can follow us on Instagram at Sox Machine. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can watch the shows on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine and follow us on all the social media platforms. We are at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, Major League Baseball, and the upcoming Major League Baseball draft, you can help support Sox Machine by becoming a subscriber at SoxMachine.com/products. For $5 a month, you can get ad-free versions of both the podcast and the website. Unlocks the comment section as well for you. We're still running that special, right, Jim, as far as the winning percentage of the first month discount?
Yes, but the price is dropping, unfortunately. Fortunately for you. Yeah, unfortunately for us. And I think the White Sox fortunes as a whole, like it was down to 52 cents versus 54. But ultimately, good news for you, the not yet subscriber. First month of Sox Machine for just 52 cents.
Yes. So great deal. Go to SoxMachine.com/products and sign up today. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things for Chicago White Sox baseball. Alongside Jim Margalus, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.